Hello folks, welcome to this tutorial video on testing post API request with Playwright TypeScript. I am Faisal Khatri. In this video, we'll learn the basics of sending the post API request using Playwright TypeScript, and we'll also learn the following approaches for adding a request body, JSON Object array, Stringified JSON, JSON file, and using a Faker library. You may please check out my earlier video on how to test GET API request with Playwright TypeScript to learn about the installation, setup, and testing GET requests with Playwright TypeScript. Let's quickly learn about the application under test. For demonstration purposes, we will use the post add order API from the RESTful e-commerce demo application. And let's talk about the request and the response that particular demo application uses. The request body of the post add order API accepts the order details in an array format, and inside that array we have an object which contains the order details and has fields such as user ID, product name, product amount, quantity, tax amount, and total amount. Once we hit this post API request, it generates the response with 201 status code having the details such as message orders added successfully, and it returns an array of orders with the details that were generated successfully. Let's understand the basics of sending the post request using Playwright TypeScript. So there are two important things that we need to learn about. First is the request and the other is the post method. In Playwright, for sending the post API request, we use this request.post. The request is an instance of API request context interface. Think of it as an HTTP client, just like a browser that knows how to visit web pages. Postman knows how to send API request, and rest assured knows how to send API request. This request exposes methods such as post, get, put, patch, delete, options, adds, and so on. It is responsible for sending HTTP requests, managing cookies, and receiving responses. Playwright provides the built-in request fixture so we can directly use it in the test. So here we use the request fixture and directly call it in this test. The post is simply a method or a function on the request object. It uses the HTTP client to send a post request. So request.post tells the HTTP client to send a post request to the specified URL with the provided options. In short, the request is the messenger and post tells the messenger what kind of message to send. That is, we need to send a post request ideally. Now let's learn about how to send a post request with JSON object or array as a request body. Let's use a static JSON array of order request and post it as a request body. In this test, we will be using this order array, which is a JSON array and contains two JSON objects with the order details. And it has a static data. We will be using it as request body to send the request to the post add order API. The data property is used to send the request body, which accepts the data in JSON array and JSON object formats. Since the post add order API accepts an array of order details, this test provides the data in JSON array format. This JSON array has two JSON objects which are equal to two orders. Finally, the response is verified. The response.status retrieves the HTTP status code. The assertion ensures that the status code 201 is retrieved in the response, and it indicates that the orders were created successfully. Sending the post API request using Stringified JSON. JSON.stringify is used while sending raw payloads, testing malformed JSON, or sending custom formatted JSON. However, the content type header should be set to application/JSON so the server correctly interprets the request body as JSON data. In this test, we have created a variable that holds the order data objects, which is then used with the data property and JSON.stringify order data to send the post API request. The order data array has a single order object where each field represents the order details such as user ID, product name, product amount, quantity, and so on. This is a normal JavaScript object at this stage, not a JSON yet. The JSON.stringify order data converts the JavaScript object into a JSON string. As we manually stringify the request payload, we should explicitly set the content type to application/JSON, which tells the server to treat the request body as a JSON data. After sending the post request, the status is validated to confirm that the response returns 201 status code, which means that the orders were successfully created in the system. How to send a JSON file as a request body in the post request? A JSON file can be a handy approach when testing post API requests. It supports large payloads and allows same file to be easily used across multiple tests. We will use the orders.json file, which contains one single order in it. Before we write the test, we should do two things. First, update the compiler options in tsconfig.json. We need to have this resolve JSON module set to true, and rest of the things, I think these are all the common and default values. The second and the most important thing is to import the JSON file. We can import it using the statement import orders from whatever the file we have with type as JSON. This will import the JSON file. And then we can write the test. This test imports test data from an external orders.json file and uses it as a request body for a post API call in Playwright. The request.post method sends the imported JSON directly as payload, and the test verifies that the API returns a 201 status code. Sending post API request using Faker library. To use the Faker library, we need to first install it by running this command npm install @faker-js/faker and /save-dev. Once the installation is complete, we can go ahead and use it in our test. I have already installed it. That is the reason why I'm not running it now. Once this installation is complete, you can find the package in package.json. You can see the dev dependencies 10.4.0 is the version @faker-js/faker. The version is 10.4.0. This makes sure that the Faker is successfully installed. Once this installation is complete, we need to create two helper functions. The first one to create the order objects with the order details, and the second that will generate the order array based on the counts supplied by the user. So this is the first helper method that we will be creating. Create order details. Here, there are different order fields that we need to fill in the values. We will fill all the values using Faker. This helps in generating the data using Faker library at runtime. So normally we don't have to worry about the unique data every time the test is run. Faker will automatically populate the values based upon the random data. So the product amount, which is a number, will be populated using the number faker.number and an integer between 100, between 1 and 100. So minimum is 1 and maximum is 100. A random number will be generated between this range. Similarly, for quantity, between 1 to 5, a random number will be generated. For text amount, 2 to 10, a random number will be generated, and the total amount will be calculated based on product amount into quantity plus text amount. So this applies to the total amount. And then finally, it will return the order object, a complete order object, including the user ID, product name, product amount, quantity, text amount, and so on. For the user ID, product ID, the same logic is applied where we import it using a random number between 1 to 50 for product ID. And for user ID, we use it 1 to 50. For product ID, we are using 1 to 100. And we are using a e-commerce method from Faker library and the product name of the e-commerce to import the unique product name. That is a random generated product name at runtime using Faker library. The second helper method is create random orders. And it has, for this also, we need to import the Faker first. We have already imported it. The same Faker object is used in this create random orders as well. It accepts a count parameter and returns randomly generated orders that can be directly used in the test. And this return faker.helpers.multiple, this is the statement, line number 22, where the actual work happens. Multiple is a helper function provided by Faker. Its job is to execute another function multiple times and collect all the results into an array. It takes two arguments. The first one is the function to execute repeatedly, and second is an options object specifying how many times to execute it. It asks Faker to call create order details function exactly the count number of times, collect all the generated orders in an array, and return that array to the caller. Now let's write the test. This test generates the request body using create random orders of 5. So this create random orders of file will generate 5 random orders and store it to this order data variable. We are also printing the values of this order data in the console just to make sure that the orders were successfully created, valid orders were created ideally. And then using the data property, we will supply this order data to the request payload. The test then verifies that the API responds with the 201 status code, confirming that the orders were successfully created. So we actually wrote in this class post API test specs, we wrote 1, 2, and 3 tests. And for the Faker library, we wrote the test in another spec. We can run the command npx playwright test to execute the full suite of tests. But since we are running only specific tests, we will be giving the spec file name to run the test. So first, let's execute the second file. Let me remove this and then the second. And you can see 3 tests passed. Before we run the next test, let's generate the playwright report. We already see this printed in the console. This same command can be used to generate the report, npx playwright show-report. Let me copy paste it here and click enter. Once you do that, you see a report generated on your default browser, and you see all the details of the test that you just ran. So we ran this post order details with static JSON array, JSON.stringify, and then using a JSON file. In this test, we can also find the details of each test, what all steps were there and how it got executed. Now let's run the next test. We will be running the test using the Faker library. And you can see one test passed. As we have printed the order data in the console, we can see the randomly generated order details getting printed on the console as well. And the product name, details, as well as the total amount also coming perfectly as we just wrote down in the test. So this particular data is coming from the create order details method that we just created. Let's quickly generate the report as well and see how it looks. We can see the report getting successfully generated and the test steps also coming up. Expectation also passed to be 201. And in the SDT out, it has the attachment also. As we have provided the console.log statement, it attached that particular SDT out in the report. So these are the 5 order details that got generated at runtime using Faker library. And the same was used to send the post API request. That's all for this video. If you have any questions, do let me know it in the comments. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Do like and share this video with your friends. Thank you.